Victoria Chen sat in her cramped studio apartment in Queens, staring at the stack of overdue bills on her kitchen counter. The winter afternoon light barely filtered through the small window, casting shadows across the peeling paint on the walls. She was 28 years old and felt like she had aged a decade in the past year alone. Her phone lay silent beside her, a reminder of how few calls came anymore. Clients had disappeared when the economy shifted. Her small interior design business had collapsed. Now she survived on occasional freelance work that barely covered groceries, let alone rent, or her mother's mounting medical expenses. Rose Chen needed round-the-clock care. Early-onset dementia had stolen her memories, her independence, and Victoria's savings. Every day brought new challenges. Every night brought fears about tomorrow. Victoria picked up her cold tea, hands steady despite the storm inside her. She had learned not to cry anymore. Tears changed nothing. Action did, but she had run out of actions to take. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Victoria Chen speaking. Miss Chen, this is Margaret Lawrence from Pierce Enterprises. Mr. Nathan Pierce would like to meet with you tomorrow at 3. Are you available? Victoria blinked. Pierce Enterprises built half the luxury towers in Manhattan. Why would they want her? Yes, I can make it. May I ask what this concerns? Mr. Pierce will explain everything. I'll text you the address. The call ended, leaving Victoria with more questions than answers. But when drowning, you grab whatever floats by. The man behind the empire, Pierce Enterprises, occupied a gleaming tower in Midtown. Victoria arrived wearing her best dress, a navy blue number she had owned for 5 years, but kept pristine for important meetings. She smoothed her long black hair, applied minimal makeup, and tried to look confident despite feeling terrified. The lobby screamed wealth and power. Marble floors reflected crystal chandeliers. Well-dressed executives moved with purpose, their expensive shoes clicking against stone. An assistant guided Victoria to the top floor. The elevator ride felt endless. Her stomach twisted with nerves and curiosity. The office door opened, and Victoria saw him standing by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Nathan Pierce had his back to her, hands clasped behind him, shoulders broad beneath a tailored charcoal suit. When he turned, Victoria felt her breath catch. He was handsome in an almost severe way. Sharp jawline, intense hazel eyes, dark brown hair styled perfectly. But what struck her most was the intelligence in his gaze. He studied her like an architect examining blueprints. Miss Chen, thank you for coming. His voice was deep, measured. Commanding without being loud, Victoria nodded, not trusting her voice yet. Please, sit. He gestured to a leather chair facing his desk. She sat back straight, hands folded in her lap. Professional. Calm. Even though her heart raced, Nathan sat across from her, lacing his fingers on the mahogany desk. Silence stretched between them. Victoria refused to break first. I researched you extensively, he finally said. Top of your class at Parsons. Award-winning sustainable design projects. Stellar recommendations. A brilliant career destroyed by circumstances beyond your control. Victoria felt heat rise to her cheeks. Why does that matter to you? Because I need someone exceptional. Someone with strength, intelligence, and integrity. For what? A design project? Nathan leaned forward, his gaze never wavering. No, to carry my child. The proposal Victoria's world tilted. She gripped the armrests, certain she had misheard. Excuse me? I need an heir. I don't want marriage or romantic entanglement. I want a clear agreement that benefits both parties substantially. Victoria stood abruptly. This is absurd, is it? Nathan also rose, moving around the desk with deliberate calm. You're drowning financially. Your mother needs specialized care you cannot afford. You've been struggling for over a year with no improvement in sight. I can change everything. He stopped a respectful distance away, but his presence filled the space between them. What exactly do you want? Victoria asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Carry my child through in vitro fertilization. No physical intimacy required. In return, I'll provide you with financial security, your mother's complete medical care, and a position in my company after the birth. He handed her a thick folder. Inside was a contract more detailed than anything Victoria had ever seen. Her eyes scanned the pages, disbelief growing with each clause. Complete medical coverage for Rose Chen. A furnished apartment in Manhattan. Monthly stipend of $15,000 during pregnancy. Executive position as Director of Sustainable Design with a six-figure salary afterward. Shared custody arrangements. Legal protections for both parties. This was enough money to transform her life completely. To save her mother. To breathe again. Why me specifically? She looked up, searching his face for answers. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice held unexpected vulnerability. Because when I look at you, I see someone who hasn't given up despite every reason to do so. That strength, that resilience, that capacity to love despite hardship. I want my child to inherit those qualities. Victoria felt something shift in her chest. No one had seen her that way in so long. Not as a burden or a failure, but as someone strong. I need time to consider this. You have until tomorrow evening, 5 o'clock. Victoria nodded, clutching the folder like a lifeline. As she walked to the door, Nathan's voice stopped her. Victoria, she turned. I'm not trying to take advantage of your situation. I'm offering you a choice. Perhaps the first real choice you've had in a long time. Victoria left without responding, but his words echoed through her mind during the entire subway ride home. That night, she sat beside her mother's bed, watching Rose sleep peacefully for once. She thought about dreams abandoned, about survival versus living, about impossible choices that might lead to unexpected futures, and she thought about Nathan Pierce, about the intensity in his eyes, about the way he had spoken to her with respect rather than pity. By morning, her decision was made. Victoria returned to Pierce Enterprises at exactly 5 o'clock the next evening. This time, she walked through those marble halls with purpose rather than fear. The signed contract sat in her worn leather bag, a document that would change everything. Nathan received her in his office, standing by the same window where she had first seen him. When he turned, something flickered in his eyes. Relief, perhaps, or satisfaction. You came back. I did. Victoria placed the contract on his desk. I have conditions beyond what's written here. Nathan raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement touching his lips. I'm listening. I want complete transparency about the medical process. No decisions made without my input. And I want my mother to have the best care available, not just adequate care. Done. He extended his hand. Welcome to Pierce Enterprises, Victoria. His handshake was firm, warm, and lasted a fraction longer than necessary. Victoria felt that touch resonate through her entire body, a warning of complications ahead. The move happened within days. Victoria found herself in a spacious 3-bedroom apartment on the Upper West Side. Hardwood floors gleamed under soft lighting. Modern furniture filled rooms that smelled of newness and possibility. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Central Park like a living painting. Rose had her own room, decorated in calming cream and soft green tones. Medical equipment lined one wall, but the space still felt warm, homely. Patricia Wu, a kind nurse with gentle hands and a soothing voice, cared for Rose during the day. Victoria walked through the apartment that first night, touching surfaces that felt unreal. Marble countertops, stainless steel appliances, a bathroom larger than her entire previous kitchen. This was temporary, she reminded herself. A means to an end, but it felt like breathing after years underwater. Tuesday evenings, Nathan insisted on weekly dinners. We need to understand each other, he said during their first official meeting as contracted partners. This child will connect us permanently. We should at least be comfortable together. The first Tuesday, he arrived with bags from a French bistro. He wore casual clothes, dark jeans, and a cream sweater that made his hazel eyes look almost golden. Without the armor of his suit, he seemed more human, more accessible. They ate at the dining table, conversation stilted at first. But Nathan asked about her childhood, and Victoria found herself talking about growing up in Queens. About her father who had worked construction and died when she was 15. About her mother who had cleaned offices at night to pay for design school. What about you? Victoria asked, emboldened by the wine he had brought. What's it like being Nathan Pierce? He was quiet, fingers tracing the rim of his glass. The soft lighting cast shadows across his face, highlighting the weariness in his eyes. Isolating. My father left before I was born. My mother built Pierce Enterprises from nothing, but she had no time for a son. I grew up in boarding schools and empty penthouses. I had everything except what mattered. Victoria saw the loneliness in those words, the child still hurting inside the powerful man. Is that why you want this child? To fill that emptiness? Nathan met her gaze directly. I want to be the father I never had. I want my child to know they're wanted, valued, loved. Something passed between them in that moment. Understanding, recognition, two people shaped by loss, trying to create something better. The growing connection. The following Tuesday, Nathan brought Italian food and stories about his first failed business venture at 23. Victoria laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in months. They sat on the couch after dinner, the city lights twinkling below like earthbound stars. Tell me about your dream project, Nathan said, turning toward her. If money and clients were no issue, what would you design? Victoria's eyes lit up. A community center in low-income neighborhoods. Beautiful, functional spaces where people feel valued. Green roofs, natural light, sustainable materials. Places that say you matter. Your community matters. Nathan watched her with an intensity that made her breath catch. You will build that. After this is over, you'll have the resources and position to make it happen. You really believe that? I believe in you. He said it simply, but those words carried weight Victoria hadn't felt in years. She realized how close they were sitting. Knees almost touching, his arms stretched along the couch back behind her. The air between them felt charged, electric. Nathan seemed to realize it too. He cleared his throat, stood abruptly. I should go. Early meeting tomorrow. But as he moved toward the door, Victoria called out. Nathan, he turned. Thank you for believing in me. His expression softened in a way that made her heart skip. You make it easy. The medical process begins, doctor. Amanda Foster explained the fertility procedure with clinical precision. Hormone injections, egg retrieval, fertilization, implantation. Each step mapped out like a business plan, removing all romance from the creation of life. Victoria listened, nodding, trying to absorb information that felt surreal. She would be creating a child, but not through love or passion. Through science and contracts and careful planning. That night, she held the first syringe with trembling hands. The needle looked impossibly sharp. She sat on the bathroom floor, trying to find courage she did not feel. Her phone rang. Nathan, did you take the injection? Not yet. Silence. Then, I'm coming over. Nathan, you don't need to handle this. I know, but I want to. 20 minutes later, he stood in her living room, still wearing his work clothes minus the jacket. His tie was loosened, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly mussed. He looked tired, human, beautiful. Show me where the supplies are. Victoria led him to the bathroom, her heart pounding for reasons that had nothing to do with the injection. Sit on the edge of the tub. She obeyed. Nathan knelt before her, opening the sterile package with practiced efficiency. His movements were confident, gentle. I need to see your stomach. Victoria lifted her shirt with shaking hands, exposing her abdomen. The bathroom suddenly felt too small, too intimate. Nathan's breath was warm against her skin as he cleaned the injection site with alcohol. Deep breath, he murmured. The needle pierced her skin, a quick sting followed by burning. But Victoria barely felt it. She was too focused on Nathan's hand resting against her stomach, his thumb unconsciously stroking her skin in small circles. Done. But he did not move away immediately. His hand stayed pressed against her abdomen, warm and solid and comforting. Victoria looked down at him, still kneeling before her, and their eyes met. Something passed between them, unspoken but undeniable. Want, need, impossibility. I'll come every night, Nathan said, his voice rougher than usual. For the injections. That's not necessary. I know. He finally withdrew his hand, but slowly, as if reluctant. But I'm doing it anyway. Breaking the rules true to his word, Nathan came every evening at 9. Victoria would sit on the couch, lift her shirt, and let him touch her. Each night his hands lingered a little longer. Each night the air grew heavier with unspoken tension. On the fifth night, Victoria wore a crop top that exposed more skin than necessary. She watched Nathan's jaw tighten, watched his eyes darken with barely controlled desire. On the eighth night, the hormones made her cry. Tears fell before the injection even began. Nathan set down the syringe immediately, his hands finding her face. "What's wrong?" "Everything. Nothing. I don't know anymore." Victoria sobbed, all her carefully maintained control shattering. "I feel like I'm losing myself in this arrangement. Like I'm just a vessel, not a person." Nathan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. Victoria buried her face in his chest, breathing in his scent of cedar and mint, feeling his heart beat steady against her cheek. "You are not just a vessel," he said fiercely, his lips against her hair. "You are the strongest, most remarkable woman I have ever met. This arrangement was supposed to be simple, but you have made it impossibly complicated." Victoria pulled back to look at him. "What do you mean?" Nathan's hands framed her face, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "I mean, I think about you constantly. I mean, these dinners are the highlight of my week. I mean, every time I touch you, I want more." "Nathan!" His name came out as a whisper, a prayer, a plea. "Tell me to stop," he breathed, his forehead touching hers. "Tell me this is just business and nothing more." Victoria should have said it. Should have pulled away. Should have remembered the contract and the boundaries and all the logical reasons this was dangerous. Instead, she whispered, "I can't." Nathan's lips found hers in a kiss that erased every carefully drawn line between them. It started gentle, questioning, but quickly deepened into something desperate and consuming. Victoria's hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer. His arms wrapped around her waist, lifting her slightly as the kiss intensified. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "We can't do this," he said, but his hand still held her close. "I know," Victoria agreed, but her fingers traced the line of his jaw. "This changes everything." "I know." They stood there, holding each other in the quiet apartment, both knowing they had crossed a line they could never uncross. The arrangement had become something far more dangerous than either had anticipated. Something real. Victoria woke to sunlight streaming through her bedroom windows, momentarily disoriented by the softness of expensive sheets and the silence of the apartment. Then memory flooded back, the kiss, Nathan's hands in her hair, the way he had held her like she was something precious rather than a transaction. She touched her lips, still feeling the ghost of his mouth on hers. Everything had shifted last night. The careful boundaries they had established had crumbled, leaving something raw and honest and terrifying in their place. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. "A text from Nathan. We need to talk. Dinner tonight." "I'll cook," Victoria stared at those words. He would cook. Not bring takeout, but actually prepare food in her kitchen. Something about that felt even more intimate than the kiss they had shared. She typed back a simple response. "Okay." The day passed in a blur of nervous energy. Victoria checked on her mother, who seemed more alert than usual. Rose smiled at her, a genuine smile that pierced Victoria's heart. "You look happy, sweetheart," Rose said, her voice clear for a brief moment before the fog returned. Victoria blinked back tears. "I think I might be, Mom." Patricia Wu arrived for the afternoon shift, giving Victoria time to shower and change. She chose a simple sage green dress, something comfortable but flattering. She told herself it did not matter what she wore, but her hands shook slightly as she applied mascara, an honest conversation. Nathan arrived at 6, carrying grocery bags and wearing jeans with a dark blue Henley. His hair was slightly damp, as if he had showered recently. The domesticity of it all made Victoria's chest tighten. "I hope you like pasta," he said, moving into the kitchen with easy familiarity. "It's one of the few things I can actually make well." Victoria perched on a bar stool, watching him work. He moved with surprising confidence, chopping vegetables, boiling water, preparing sauce from scratch. The kitchen filled with the aroma of garlic, basil, and tomatoes. "My mother's housekeeper taught me," Nathan said, sensing her unspoken question. Rosa practically raised me. She said any man who could not feed himself was not truly independent. She sounds wonderful. She was. She passed away 5 years ago. Nathan's hands paused briefly before continuing their work. I still miss her. They fell into comfortable silence. Victoria watched the way Nathan's shoulders moved beneath his shirt, the concentration on his face as he tasted the sauce and adjusted seasonings. This version of him, relaxed and unguarded, felt more dangerous than the powerful businessman she had first met. When dinner was ready, they sat at the small kitchen table rather than the formal dining room. It felt more intimate this way, knees occasionally brushing under the table, voices softer in the smaller space. Nathan poured wine, then set down his fork and looked at her directly. About last night, he began. Victoria's heart hammered. I know, it complicated things. No. Nathan reached across the table, taking her hand. It clarified things. Victoria, this arrangement we made was logical, practical, sensible. But somewhere between contract signatures and Tuesday dinners, something changed. What are you saying? Nathan's thumb traced circles on her palm, sending shivers up her arm. I'm saying that every rule I set for myself has become impossible to follow. I'm saying that I think about you first thing in the morning and last thing at night. I'm saying that giving you those injections has become the sweetest torture because I get to touch you, but not the way I want to. Victoria felt heat flood through her body. Nathan, this is dangerous. We have a legal agreement, a plan. If we blur these lines, everything could fall apart. Or, he said softly, his eyes holding hers, everything could finally fall into place. Before Victoria could respond, he stood and moved around the table. He pulled her gently to her feet, his hand settling on her waist. Tell me you don't feel this too, he challenged. Tell me I'm alone in this and I'll walk away. We'll go back to being professional. But if you feel even a fraction of what I feel, then we need to be honest about it. Victoria's hands rested on his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing beneath her palms. I'm terrified. So am I. His forehead touched hers. I've built an empire, negotiated billion-dollar deals, faced down corporate sharks. But this scares me more than anything. Because it's real, Victoria whispered. Because it matters. Nathan pulled back enough to look into her eyes. You matter. Not as the mother of my future child, not as part of a contract. You matter to me, Victoria Chen. Tears spilled down Victoria's cheeks. I never expected this. I came to you desperate and broken, and you've made me feel whole again. Nathan kissed away her tears, gentle brushes of his lips against her cheeks. You were never broken. You were surviving. There's a difference. Their lips met again. But this kiss was different from the night before. Slower, deeper, full of promises and possibilities. Nathan's hands cradled her face like she was made of precious glass. Victoria melted into him, all her defenses finally crumbling. The procedure. 2 weeks later, Victoria sat in Dr. Foster's office for the egg retrieval procedure. Nathan insisted on being there despite her protests that it was not necessary. He sat beside her through the pre-procedure consultations, held her hand during the sedation, and was the first face she saw when she woke in recovery. Hey, he said softly, brushing hair from her forehead. How do you feel? Groggy, weird. Victoria blinked, trying to focus. Did everything go okay? Perfectly. Dr. Foster retrieved 15 healthy eggs. Now we wait for the fertilization results. Victoria nodded, then noticed Nathan's other hand holding something. What's that? He looked almost embarrassed. I stopped at a bookstore on my way here. Thought you might want something to read during recovery. It was a collection of architectural photography featuring sustainable buildings from around the world. Victoria felt her heart swell at the thoughtfulness. You remembered. I remember everything you tell me. Nathan's expression was tender. Rest now. I'm taking you home. Home. The word felt significant coming from him. 48 hours, the waiting was excruciating. Dr. Foster had explained that they would know within 2 days which embryos were viable for implantation. Nathan stayed close during those 48 hours, working from Victoria's apartment, checking on her constantly. Rose had a particularly good day. recognizing Victoria clearly and asking about the handsome young man who kept appearing. Victoria and Nathan shared lunch with her, and watching him gently engage with her mother made Victoria fall a little harder. "You're good with her," Victoria said after Rose had fallen asleep for her afternoon nap. "She's lovely. I can see where you get your strength." Nathan pulled Victoria onto the couch beside him. "Tell me about her. Before the illness." Victoria curled against his side, his arm wrapping around her shoulders. "She was a force of nature. Worked multiple jobs but always made time for me. She loved poetry, old movies, and terrible puns. She taught me that beauty matters, that the spaces we create affect how people feel about themselves and their lives." "She sounds remarkable." She was. She still is underneath the fog. Victoria looked up at him. "What about Rosa? Tell me about her." Nathan's expression softened with memory. "She was from Guatemala, came to America with nothing but determination. She could make a feast from nothing, sang while she cooked, and never let me get away with feeling sorry for myself. When my mother was too busy for school events, Rosa came instead. She's the reason I turned out even halfway decent." They sat together in comfortable silence, the afternoon light painting golden patterns across the floor. Victoria realized this was what she had been missing. Not just security or stability, but connection. Someone who saw her completely and chose to stay. The call doctor. Foster called on the third day. Victoria put the phone on speaker so Nathan could hear. "We have excellent news. 5 embryos are viable and of high quality. We can proceed with implantation whenever you're ready." Victoria looked at Nathan, seeing her own mixture of excitement and terror reflected in his eyes. "Give us a week," Nathan said. "We need some time." After the call ended, they sat in heavy silence. This was it. The point of no return. Once the embryo was implanted, their lives would be permanently intertwined. "Are you having second thoughts?" Victoria asked quietly. Nathan turned to her, taking both her hands in his. "My only thought is that this arrangement we made, this cold business transaction, it was all wrong from the start." Victoria's heart sank. "What do you mean?" "I mean this." He slid off the couch, kneeling before her. "I mean that somewhere between contract negotiations and Tuesday dinners I fell in love with you. I mean that I don't want you to be just the mother of my child. I want you to be my partner, my equal, my love." Victoria's breath caught. "Nathan, I know this changes everything we agreed to. I know this is not what you signed up for, but I can't go through with this pretending what's between us doesn't exist. I love you, Victoria. Not despite the circumstances that brought us together, but including them. All of it!" Tears streamed down Victoria's face. "This is insane. We barely know each other. I know you better than I've known anyone. I know you're brave and compassionate and brilliant. I know you put everyone else's needs before your own. I know you cry during sad movies and make terrible jokes when you're nervous. I know the way you bite your lip when you're concentrating and how your eyes light up when you talk about sustainable design." Victoria laughed through her tears. "You really have been paying attention." Nathan cupped her face, his thumbs wiping away tears. "I've been falling for you since the moment you walked into my office, all dignity and desperation, and refused to be diminished by either." "I love you too," Victoria whispered. "I tried not to. I told myself it was just gratitude or proximity or hormones. But it's none of those things. It's real." Nathan's smile was radiant. "So what do we do now? We go forward. Together. Not because of a contract, but because we choose each other." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "Will you marry me? Not for the baby, not for the arrangement, but because I want to spend my life with you?" Victoria laughed, a sound of pure joy. "We're doing this completely backward. Is that a yes?" "Yes. Absolutely yes." 6 months later, Victoria stood in the nursery they had designed together, her hand resting on her rounded belly. The room was painted in soft yellows and greens, filled with sustainable furniture and natural light. Outside the window, Central Park bloomed with spring colors. Nathan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his hands covering hers on her stomach. "How are my girls today?" he murmured against her neck. "Active. She's been kicking all morning." Victoria leaned back against him. I still can't believe this is real sometimes. Believe it. Nathan turned her in his arms. You're my wife, we're having a daughter, and your community center project breaks ground next month. This is very real, Victoria smiled up at him. You know, when I signed that contract, I thought I was selling pieces of myself to survive. And now? Now I know I was finding my way home. To you, to this life, to becoming the person I was always meant to be. Nathan kissed her softly. We found our way to each other. Everything else was just the path. In the other room, Rose called out, having one of her clearer moments. Patricia Wu's gentle voice responded. The sounds of life, of family, of love filled the apartment that had once felt like a gilded cage, but had become a true home. Victoria had entered into an impossible arrangement with a stranger, thinking she was sacrificing herself for survival. Instead, she had discovered that sometimes the most unexpected paths lead to the most extraordinary destinations. She had found not just security, but belonging, not just stability, but passion, not just a contract, but true love. And their daughter would be born into a home built not on agreements and obligations, but on choice, commitment, and the kind of love that transforms everything it touches. The end.